100 hours in the UK. It is the final Friday of the month somehow, and it is therefore, of course, time for PMI Live. Welcome to episode 112 with myself, Rich Seddon, and I'm also joined by Des Kelly, who is leading affairs today. Des, before we talk about the topic, I've got some housekeeping first of all. For those of you joining us on the live streams on LinkedIn, on YouTube and Facebook, great to have you with us. We can see we've just gone live on there. Today, we're going to do some learning assessment during the session and also do a little test on this Friday afternoon, see how much of a difference Des's learning sharing has been effective live in action. We're going to have a poll before a piece of theory has been presented, and then afterwards, and see if Des has managed to change your mind, your perspective, or otherwise. So if you would like to take part in that, very long way of saying, jump on into the live session. You can still register at pmi.co.uk/webinars. You find it on the top menu. Not sure what's up there. The top menu, that's up there. Also on the menus on our website at pmi.co.uk, you'll find the Knowledge Hub, which is where all 111 previous episodes of PMI Live can be found. Free to access, free to share, great resource. It's searchable, it's filterable, it is invaluable. So today we are talking change, specifically how to stop change failing. Now, you'll know if you're a regular attendee of PMI Live, we try and push the boundaries through these sessions in two ways. The topics come about by through conversation with our customers and through direct requests from our customers. It also comes from the practice of our consultants. So that's the first kind of element of it. And the second piece we use PMI Live for is professional development for our own consultants. So what we love to do is give people the time and sometimes the space to think outside the box and think outside the norm of their slide decks, their presentations, to look at a topic from a different angle. And anyone that's joined Des on a previous session will know that he loves to do just that. And I can tell you, having seen it, he certainly has done that today. And thinking about an age-old problem that, Des, how many years have you been practicing improvement?
Well, with PMI, 20 years, and beyond that, probably a further 15.
You don't look old enough. Okay, so 35 years of change practice we have in the seat here. So let's test him out. PMI Live is just that, it's live session. Do put your questions into the Q&A. If you've got an observation or a challenge for Des, he loves a challenge on a Friday afternoon. We've had enough technical challenges already today, so let's keep him with intellectual challenges, please. Put your comments in the chat. It'd be great to hear from you. So just before we hand over to Des, I'd just like to point out two further things. On the intro slides, you will have seen, drum roll please, we have launched our two new apprenticeship standards. One is our Agile Business Analyst and two is our Agile Operations Leader. Let me tell you about those two very briefly. So the Business Analyst program is, as it sounds, it is a true certified business analyst program. It's available now, and the content from it has been drawn to not just feature the standard business analyst content that you need in order to be certified, but we've also inserted improvement methodologies within there. And in addition to that, we've got our agile content that has also gone in there. So you've got what we believe is one of the most rounded courses for business analysts on the market. We love to chat and love to talk. You may have noticed. Do get in touch if you would like to. And finally, I promise this isn't a promotion, but as you can tell, I'm really excited about these things. Our Agile Operations Leader. Now, I spent 13 years as a fee-earning consultant, and in that time, I had several operational roles within clients, particularly long-term, usually placements. And this Agile Operations Leader course is the course I wish I'd had available to me when I was working in that setting. Why do I say that so confidently? Because time and time again, I came across what I term the accidental manager. So the person that's been really effective at their job as a process operator in a business that suddenly finds themselves as a team leader, as a department leader. And just because they were a good operator, they're suddenly expected to be a good leader as well. And that's an unfair ask. Some people take it like a duck to water, but this isn't something that we are necessarily born with. These are skills that need to be taught and developed. That's what the Agile Operations Leader does. We've taken an apprenticeship standard and boy, oh boy, have we beefed it up. I'm immensely pleased with the content of it and can't wait to show you. So call to action. If you'd like to find out more of those, you can, Jamil is going to share links to both of those web pages, which are going to appear now. On there, the call to action is join one of our online information and guidance sessions. If you are outside of the UK, you can still access those through a commercial route. So just because they're levy funded in the UK, in England specifically, doesn't mean you can't access them. So join one of those sessions. They run twice a week, every Tuesday, every Thursday. I sound like an advertorial. I'm going to stop. Desmond Kelly, would you like to take us through? Well, no, tell us where have you been since we last saw you, actually, before we go through the content.
Right. Well, where have I been? Well, I've been everywhere, man. So a couple of the really big things, I think. One of the joyous things I've been involved in is starting up again with an organisation I worked with some years back, and we're back together again now, and we're looking at their CI strategy, their continuous improvement strategy, looking at training leaders in CI. We're also looking at how projects are managed, and one of the great things is building a learning academy for some very talented people across a very complex series of organizations, and that's a really great thing to do. It's a whole complete gambit. Some of the other things, we're working with one of our long range existing clients. They're faced with massive amounts of change from effectively their international standards. They're an internationally based organization, and their international standards are changing. And because the standards are changing, that means the outcomes of the processes have to change. That means those processes need to be looked at and studied. The systems need to be relooked at, and that's been good fun as well. So
are you trying to say that hope? Are you trying to say that hope alone is not enough? Is that what you're trying to say?
It is. It's not the words I'd have used, but yes, I can concur with that. I think yes, that's the thing.
Excellent.
So today,
Des,
then,
take us through the content, please. And
right.
Just before Des does that, it comes with a health warning. Des has recently been given a co-pilot license. We'll see if you can spot any AI generated images, because he's gone to town. So look out for those.
Right. Well, good. And I would also like to thank some of my colleagues for doing the better ones. Right. So what we should be looking at today is, first of all, exploring the premise and the context that drive organizational improvement towards excellence. Now, that's a hard sentence to read, and is probably even harder to listen to, so I should be picking through that and explaining what that means in a moment. I'm going to introduce you to a little model that has emerged through actually maybe years and years of research, and also was stimulated by one of the questions that Rich asked when developing this particular webinar, and that is to introduce you to something called purpose-driven system-aware improvement. I'm also going to take a fair bit of time out to actually explain why we believe, and certainly after the 35 years that I've been working in this, I now absolutely, totally insist that process need to be strategic assets. And I'm going to explain why, and why you can't achieve excellence if you don't treat process as an asset. And then the other aspect of it, I'm going to be defining the critical factors behind purpose-driven system-aware improvement, and linking them back to the actual what Rich and the website were talking about when we started. So if we look, this is what you would have seen on our website should you have gone on and tried to book onto this program. In fact, those of you that did see it. So we now, if we look at this, I'm just going to blow it up a little bit, this little bit here, and read this out, because the premise was improvement efforts fail to last when they're treated as isolated projects instead of being part of your organization's everyday operations. In many cases, that is indeed true. However, without embedding process management and treating your process as an asset, change won't stick. Now, that was the premise that we started off with today. And there is a reason for why I've homed in on that. Is because in my practice with lots of the organizations I work with, some may disagree with that as a premise. So we actually have the situation here. So I'm just going to have this. We've got premise 1. Improvement efforts fail to last when they're treated as an isolated project instead of part of your organization's everyday operations. Without embedding process management and treating your process as assets, change won't stick. And I've heard people say, and actually challenge me very recently and say, that's not true, Des. There is another premise. All your improvement efforts can succeed when treated as isolated projects, provided they are focused, sharply scoped, well-resourced, and strategically aligned. And embedding process management everywhere may create unnecessary complexity, slow change, and maybe stifle innovation. Now, I think that both are interesting premises. But what I'd be really interested in, and we're going to do a little poll now, I'm really interested in, what do you think? So which of these two premises that are on the screen now do you most align with? Now, what I want you to do is to select the most relevant answer from below. So answer 1 is premise 1. Answer 2 is premise 2. Answer 3 is, well, both of them work for me, Des. Or answer 4 is neither. And if you've got anything to say about those premises that are on the screen now, and this is going to be fundamental to the conversation as we go forward, drop it into the chat. And Rich and Jamil, who are on the in the background, will pick up on the chats and make sure I know what you are saying.
Excellent. So unhelpfully, Teams has decided to stick the poll right in the middle of those two premises, Des. So if you can't read those, do let us know. Jamil, if you're able, could you paste those into the chat? That might be a challenge for you, I acknowledge, but I can see people answering, so I'm assuming some people can see. Okay, so got lots of responses coming in, which is great to see. So got some comments as well, Des. You can't improve without processes, i.e. standardization. I think it's situational specific for some parts of change. It depends on what, where, why, especially the scale of change. Great point. What do you make of those comments, then, Des?
I think I'm actually sat amongst a group of people who probably know something about process management and improvement would be my immediate conclusion, because I think that may well be right. Yes, it is a relief. However, and this is, I think, one of the things, it'd be interesting to see what the total results are in a moment. In fact, I'm not going to say what I was about to say, because for those of you that haven't yet nominated, I don't want to influence you, so I'm going to say something in a moment, Rich, when we come back to it, when you decide that sufficient time has elapsed for the poll to be closed.
Jamil, thank you for rustling those up. Jamil has also copied those into the chat so you guys can see it, because I'm aware that certainly on my screen the poll was right in the middle of the text and blocking my view from seeing it properly. Okay, so what have we got, Des? I think it's looking like premise 1. Most popular, right, followed by both. And a poor show for premise 2 alone.
Interesting. And I think that is, I don't think it surprises me. I am actually quite pleased that a number of people said both.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also quite happy that neither worked.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain why as we go, because there could be a very plausible reason for why neither or both can work, and that's what we're going to look at. Okay,
and the
great.
Good news is you don't need to rewrite your slides. So,
well, no, this is true, and yes, I don't have to now busk, do I? I can actually go with the intended flow. Right. So if we lose that little,
thank you, folks, for doing that.
Can I get rid of that? I can get rid of that. Good. So on that basis, then, if I now was to look at our two contexts, you could actually assign, our two premises, you could actually assign a potential context when the premise is more appropriate. So if I was to look at premise one, maybe the potential context for that sort of premise would be large, process-heavy, mature organizations. So things like we work within the hospital and healthcare systems, within government agencies, banks, large manufacturing or production systems. That premise might suit that context. However, we've also got clients who are very different from those very large, process-heavy, mature organizations. They're smaller, they're agile, they're like growth startups. They are capital funded at this moment in time. They're innovation driven. So this is going to be things like new startups that we're involved in, some of the tech firms, the product teams, all those sorts of things that we've got. So the point I would like to stress is that the premise is relevant depending on the context. Now, someone said something which I think was situational specific, which may be another way of saying context specific. I'll make an assumption that that's it. So the point I wanted to get to was this, is that if the context changes, maybe the premise needs to change. Because we have this thing called context tension. I'm going to look at this one here. Take the top one as it's emerged. That's effectively our premise one today. And if we've got premise two, I'm going to put it at the bottom. So I've got north and south. I've got polemic premises. And actually, they can exist in the same environment, or they can both exist. Now, if you think about it, you can have other polemic situations. For example, you can have bottom-up driven change, and you can have top-down driven change. All that's done is change the context, and again, that creates a little bit of contextual tension.
It does. So in the work that you do, just before you move on, over the years, have you seen any one of these, the tension being in any one of these directions greater than another? Question that just occurred to me as you were talking there.
The ones that I think I've probably seen which are the most prevalent is the one on the right hand side, where the leadership team or the leader has decided on a direction to go and commands that the organization goes that way. And that may be right. But what I want to actually explore is that, okay, there's nothing wrong with top-down direction. In fact, in some cases, it's to be applauded. It shows what leadership is. But what is the method and the means and the model? And what is the context into which this drive is going? So I think I would say top right-hand side is where I would see predominance. I don't know whether anybody else online would like to make a direction. I think it's a great question, Rich.
Yeah, well, I was thinking there's two different elements to my response to that question, which would be most common would be southeast. So the top, somewhere in between top down and targeted success through projects. Most common, most successful will be the top one, and where that's done well and done effectively. That's where the greatest successes I've seen through my time.
Yeah, and I think that's true, and I think it may well be the organisations that we deal with. We tend to deal with some very large organisations, don't we? So yes, I think you're right, Rich. I think I would probably say where have I seen the greatest success? Definitely at the top. Where have I seen the predominance of starting points? On the right.
Yeah,
and I think that.
Thanks, guys.
So, which actually helps us build, because then that takes us into something about why understanding the organizational context is going to be important. And what I would say here is that really context, the context we see, shapes the assumptions that we have. And it could be said that the premise is only valid within the context in which it was formed. And when the environment, the data, the goals, or the environment changes, maybe the assumptions behind the premise need to be changed as well, because maybe they no longer hold shape. So what I would like to emphasize is, in this case, the context is not a backdrop to what's going on. The context is the lens through which all improvement must be viewed. Because without understanding that context, then how will you know what you are trying to change? Sustainable change requires understanding of the system, the people and the interaction with that system, the environment and the interaction with the people and the system, and of course the processes and the environment and how they operate together. So it is a potential thesis that says when the context changes, so must the premise. But then that gives us a problem, because that means every time we need to have a different model, potentially, for changing the way the organization works. So what I'm going to actually take on now is actually explaining possibly a new way to see the work that we as improvement or CI professionals can go. Now, I've spent a lot of years in this, Rich. You spent an awful lot of years in it as well. But we collectively in PMI have spent we're in our 41st year, I think it is, over 40 years, testing competing ideas about change. And we've had some really, really inspirational people who have thought long and hard and practiced long and hard and worked with some great organizations around the globe on projects, embedding process management, understanding process control and learning. We've got some really good experiential knowledge. And I think it's fair to say what we found is it's not a single answer, but there is, however, a deeper pattern of things that go on beneath all of them that we can look at. And what we've learned is we've learned that understanding the context reshapes our premise. But that's only really valuable when it's grounded in real systems. Now, systems here, and this is something, Rich, we spoke about this morning, was systems here is the business as a system, the interdependent, how the interdependent processes work together to achieve the aim of our system. It's not IT, it is the business as a system. So we need to be grounded in real systems, what the real system is. And that will evolves into a purpose-driven, system-aware premise that guides meaningful and sustainable improvement. So the model I'm going to emerge during the course of this is one which is, I think, it's a synthesis of pretty much everything we've talked about over those 40 years. And it's not new. It is maybe just a different lens by which we view the world through. And it's called purpose-driven system-aware improvement. And what I hope through this is to actually respond to all of the questions that posed in the advert that appeared on our website. Now, the purpose-driven system-aware improvement, I'm going to make it and suggest and advocate it's a premise for all contexts. And it comes something like this: is sustainable improvement emerges from within the system you're operating in, guided by a purpose. So why does the system exist? For what reason was this system generated? So it's guided by that purpose. Informed by operational knowledge. So how are things done today? And enabled by leadership that understands rather than controls. And I think a leader of wisdom is one today that appreciates they can't possibly understand all of the elements of their complex system. And therefore, to try and control it is rather a fruitless thing. What we need them to do is to ensure that structured initiatives can support change, but those structured initiatives will only support change when they arise from real demand, what is the needs of the system, and they reinforce systemic learning and not replace systemic learning. And that little model you see that's emerged on the right-hand side, I'm just going to take you through now. And then I'm going to stop and ask, I think, a question. This purpose-driven system-aware improvement has a central theme that I would encourage everyone to see if they can get in behind, which is this: processes are strategic assets. And I'm going to talk specifically about how do you get your processes to be strategic assets. Think about it. a process being an asset, just as much as a building or a piece of equipment is.
And Des, I can't remember whether it was one of your webinars that we had a discussion around, posed the challenge. What if processes appeared as fixed assets on a company's balance sheet? How would you value them? How would you appraise them? Maybe that wasn't one of yours. I will try and find the reference to that. It was a really interesting kind of psychological test to how much more seriously would we take them, and would organisations take them if they did? Well,
I think that's a great. I think it's a great sensitizer, that, Rich, and I think I'm going to touch on that in a little bit in a few slides' time. So that one there, processes are strategic assets. Hold that one close to you. Then number 2 is purpose anchors the system. So why the system exists is it anchors the complete thing. Why are we doing the things we do? How can we improve it? And if you don't know the purpose, you can't improve. Of course, you can't improve in the right direction. Operational knowledge, how the existing system works today, fuels insight, and it's that insight that gives us learning. Improvement emerges from within the system. So when you've got that operational insight, you'll get the insight to know where the system needs improvement, and it comes from within the system. It's not something that's imposed from the outside. Leadership is there to enable, not control. Now, that could be quite a contentious point, but a leadership enables, not controls. One of the most important factors, I think, are the measures that we use within our organizations. And our measures must support behaviors that drive sustainability. Now, you can take sustainability, you can spread it out across any aspect of performance you like, whether it be environment, whether it be longevity of the business, whether it be the benefit of your employees, the benefit of your clients and your customers, right? We're talking about sustainability across the broadest thing. And then finally, structured initiatives must reinforce the system of processes that we have, and that leads us to purpose-driven, system-aware improvement. Now, I've got a little poll, and this is going to be complicated, guys.
Well, this is the knowledge check I warned you against, to see if Des can change your opinion here,
well,
or indeed your mind. So, yeah, go ahead, Des.
Right. So, okay. So this one here is that right? Considering what I've just said about purpose-driven, system-aware the model, the 7 factors we just discussed, if you were to think about those in relationship in the context of your own organization, which of these do you feel are your organization's weakest spot? That area that will need the greatest level of attention from the professional improvement people. So this is going to be complicated because I'm going to get you to rank them in the order of which needs the greatest attention. So by definition, that means the weakest at the top of your list when you do the ranking, and the strongest at the bottom. Any further explanation needed on that, Rich, or would you like to take?
I think I'm with you. Let's try it in another tone, another voice. So just to be clear, we're asking you about your own organisations. These 7 points Des has just taken through. In your organisation, which is the weakest, which is the strongest? And we're going to ask you to rank them, weakest at the top, weakest first, yeah? Okay, let's give that a whirl, Jamil. Let's get that on screen and see how people get on. Okay, so you may need to scroll on those. So you drag and drop the responses that have appeared on screen into the order that you think weakest at the top. So from 1 to 7, which is weakest, top priority, which is your organisation strongest on. So let's have a look. I can see that's now gone live. So I'm going to submit that so we can starting to see some responses. Excellent. Okay, so I can see people are working through that now in the chat. That's great. So have a think about it, and we're going to see if the responses we get now differ when Des is finished later. Okay, great. Just working through that. Give you a few minutes to think about it. Well, it's quite a lot to absorb there.
There is. That's quite a lengthy thing to do, and I can imagine people going, "Oh, no, I've changed my mind." So it is only indicative. Don't worry, no one's going to be held account to it, and there is no record of it other than this, the result. So it'd be really interesting to see. And if you've got any views as we go along, please drop them into the chat, and Rich and Jamil will alert us to them. I'm trying not to watch the chat, so I don't want it to distract me from the key theme that I'm trying to drive over.
Yes, always a good thing. It's the same as any Teams meeting. It'd be good to disable chat, in my opinion. Full stop. Okay, so give you a few more moments to think about that, and we've got some changes here. Now, Des and I didn't explore in great detail as to what we expected the audience's responses. We thought about our own responses on this, but not necessarily what the audience responses. So it'd be really interesting to see how these change, and I can see them moving around. So just a reminder, your things you think are the area you think is weakest in your organization currently. Okay, I'm going to take a screenshot of that so we can compare it when we get to the end later. If there's anything you're not sure of, do let us know. Okay, so there we go. I've grabbed that, so I've got a sense of what's the order they're in. Cool. Okay, so if you want to keep on thinking about that while Des is talking, do. We're going to press on and have a look and see if anything changes through this explanation.
Right. So you're not sharing the results, Rich. You're keeping it as a secret at the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see what that looks like when people finish.
That looks great. Okay then. Right. So the first one I'm going to talk about then is processes are strategic assets, and so there's a number of elements behind this. Centered to it has got to be customer experience, and the customer experience, how the customer experiences are the outcomes of our process, is absolutely central to it. But let's face it, our businesses or our organizations are what our customers need us to be. However, one of the things we can look at, and why the lenses you can look at for process being strategic advantage, think about them as being competitive advantage, right? They are really, the processes that you operate are the only things that differentiate you against your competition. And therefore, you should look after those things, because you should look after the things that differentiate you against people you're competing with. Your processes are the thing that give you the adaptability and the agility. Now, flexibility, responding to the market. Employee empowerment. It is through your processes and the way we do our work that employees can get engaged and socialize with what the business is or the organization is trying to do. It is only through your processes can you get consistency and reliability. All too frequently, organizations rely upon the heroics of their employees to create reliability or to create consistency. The other thing is that it is only through processes where we can maintain our corporate knowledge, the lessons learned of yesterday, that we can avoid things going wrong tomorrow. That knowledge management element of our process is key. And then, of course, process innovation, the real things, the things that allow new things to emerge, process innovation. So great organizations don't just run processes. They elevate them into assets that inspire excellence, empower their people to engage in the purpose of the system, and help shape the future of the organization. Processes are more than just how the work gets done. They are strategic assets that drive value for your customers, agility, innovation, and above all, they give you the competitive advantage. So treating processes as assets means managing, improving, and learning from them continuously. And I think the final point I'll say on this before I go to the summary on this one, process excellence becomes a daily habit when it's embedded in how people think, how they act, and how they're permitted to improve.
And quick comment on that, Des, if I may. So some of you may have joined us a couple of months ago when, back in March, I think it was, we did an internal case study. So this was a process redefinition, process re-engineering project that we'd run ourselves internally. And we had the project team on PMI Live presenting the results. And for me, when I see this, the diagram Des has got there on the right, every single one of those has been ticked because we've started treating that enrollment process internally as a strategic asset. It's not just something that has to be done and boxes that has to be ticked. And for me personally, as a leader, it's been joyful to see the bottom one there, the employee empowerment to improve. Without that process being designed in the way, we've now got a team, Jamil included here, who are innovating every day without the need for leadership involvement. They own the process, they know it inside out, they're the expert, but if we hadn't done that work, they wouldn't be there.
Rich, you've just said some really key things in there, which and we didn't rehearse this at all, which is great to hear, because actually I'm going to come to that in a moment, because that very thing is that they own the process, they own the innovation. And I think that is such a useful thing to think about when we think about purpose-driven, system-aware improvement. And what I'm going to say, final word on a little bit on assets is this, is that it is the asset that differentiates your organization from anyone else. Now, the idea that people and processes are really the only assets that differentiate your organization. So just think about it, right? Because that concept is based upon the principle that the tools, equipment, buildings, technology are all things that your competitors can get, and they're accessible and standardized across industries or sectors. Everybody can gain access to them. The only thing that really gives you competitive advantage is how your organization defines its system of processes and the unique ways in which your organization utilizes these resources, the people and the processes. And you can see under my little graphic of Atlas, our people and process will set us apart. Feels like there's a song in there somewhere, Rich. So what can you do?
He's definitely doing something.
Yeah, definitely doing something. So what can you do then to embed process management and treat processes as assets? So what you can do is, first of all, is understand and visualize how the value your customer needs flows through your process by identifying key value streams from the customer's perspective. So define and map your business as a system. Then within that business system, assign ownership for it, establish accountability for process performance, process improvement, and customer impact to individuals. Owners should understand, owners of process should understand how their processes affect customers. And then once you've done that, you really need to track the process. The process's health using KPIs that reflect both operational efficiency and customer experience. And I know that, Rich, you and I, we've all too frequently seen organizations that have very extensive mechanisms for KPIs on efficiency and pay no attention at all to customer experience. So they look for efficiency, but they don't look for effectiveness. So they become very inward looking. So measure process performance, but measure it in the right way. Then someone, I think in one of the chats a little earlier, talked about standardization. And I fully concur with that person when it says that you can't improve something that hasn't got a standard. So we need to maintain consistency in delivering value to the customer, while always seeking ways to enhance the quality, speed, and responsiveness of our process. To achieve that, what we need to do is to make process performance and customer impact part of our leadership reviews, our decision making, effectively embedding process analysis in our governance. And then really importantly is to build capability within our teams, build the skills for our people so that they can learn how to enhance customer value. The second one then was purpose anchors the system. Now, true improvement begins with clarity of what the business system was about, why it exists, what was it trying to achieve. When we know what the purpose of the system is about, we can put the correct measures in place, and those measures should inform us and encourage us to make improvements. And I suppose what I would say there is that purpose is not just simply that statement to do this. It is the anchor, or maybe the lighthouse, or the North Star that helps align our people, our processes, and our priorities towards meaningful and sustainable improvement. Effectively, purpose is the standard by which we measure, design, and improve everything we do. So how can we as a group ensure that the purpose anchors the system? You can read these as you go through. Because of time, I think I'm going to go through just a couple of them. But the first one, articulate what the system exists to achieve in terms of value to the customer or society. So define the purpose of the system clearly. And all too frequently, it's muddy. It's not clear. We need to communicate that purpose really clearly and consistently to everybody who works in the organization so they know why they're coming to work. We need to select measures and KPIs that reflect how well that system is fulfilling its purpose, not just operational efficiency, but how well it is satisfying its purpose, what it was set out to accomplish. Use the purpose to prioritize. Map and improve processes with the end purpose in mind. So design your processes around the purpose. Help individuals connect their roles to the broader purpose. So empowering people through clarity about what the purpose is. And then regularly revisit whether the system is aligned with its purpose as the context evolves. Because we need to know, is our system still addressing the environment it wants to? Or has the world moved on?
Yeah, and that's one of the flaws with a common process, a project-based approach, isn't it? It's move on, leave it, and the improvement atrophies, not necessarily because of the process design, but because the context has changed around it and the world has changed around it.
I think so, yeah, that is so right, Rich. Yeah, absolutely so right. Yeah. So on to 3 then. Operational knowledge fuels insight. Now this is really one of the key ones for me, and I think it's one of the and I'm sure everyone on this call would agree with me that it's the people who operate the process who hold the deepest and most profound understanding of what works well and what doesn't. And if ever I want to know anything about an organization, I don't talk to the bosses, I go and talk to the guys and girls that do the work, because improvement must be grounded in understanding what the real demands of the system are by having real data and real experience of what's happening. And operational knowledge is not just the insight, it's actually the foresight of being able to predict what can happen. And it does really do, it reveals what's working and what's failing. So what can we do to get operational knowledge into our businesses? So the first thing is, and this is something we've expanded on in our practice quite significantly, is to ensure that we establish regular forums, the huddles, the retrospectives, where frontline staff can share their observations and ideas with people who can change the process. Make sure we observe the work. Leaders and improvement teams should never make a decision about anything until they've been to the real place, been to the Gemba, to see the systems and processing work. Use real data, not assumptions. So base decisions on actual process data that I have to say has been correctly analysed, on customer feedback and frontline insights. Involve operators in the design of any changes. Close the loop by showing how the frontline input leads to action and improvement. And then build feedback into the system itself. So use visual management, so back to the top really, dashboards and regular reviews to reflect performance. In 4, we have improvement emerges from within the system. Sustainable changes arise from operational reality, not external imposition. Someone new rocking up to an organization and say, go do this, without understanding the context that the current operational reality creates, is deemed and guaranteed to fail. Our improvement is shaped by purpose, real demand, and lived experience. So the message here is, I think, avoid forcing change as an external event. Let improvement emerge from the team's insights gained through studying their own work, and make improvement a consequence of learning, not an outcome of a project. And begin by understanding what the customers truly need and not what departments or department leaders assume. So we have, again, our improvement emerges from the system. Here's the what we need to do. Study the system first. Use observations, data, and dialogue to understand how the system actually works. Engage people to do the work. Involve the frontline teams in identifying problems and designing their solutions. Use real data, not reports. Create safe spaces for learning. Encourage experimentation. That's our PDSA, reflection and learning. And again, you see a common theme in this one here. Use visual management, daily reviews. So you see some common themes emerging throughout these, where they actually are repeating themselves throughout each of the aspects. It's almost like a little tapestry where the warp and weft appears frequently throughout the pattern. If we move on to leaders enabled and not control, leaders should model behaviours. We've got to ask them to remove barriers, certainly ask better questions, and make it easier for teams to improve. And really crucially, I would say, not dictate solutions because they don't know the context, or impose metrics, because if you don't understand the context, how will you know the measuring device is correct? Leaders really should create conditions for systemic learning, not just for compliance, but we need to reinforce the value of process thinking. And one of the key messages I would have about leadership enables and not controls is leadership don't drive improvement. You can create the conditions, the space, the environment where improvement can exist and happen.
Des, I'll just share a little something with you on that. Sorry to interrupt you, Flo.
Okay.
Last week I was doing an annual appraisal of one of our team members, and as these things sometimes do, we try and leave them to go in the direction they need to go. And I was sharing some reflections on this. One of the questions we ask is certainly people in their first year. Is it what you expected? You know, when you came into this job, how does that, how does today compare to what you expected it to be? And the question was reversed on me, actually, about some of my learnings. And I think this is one of the biggest areas for me about, and I shared this in the review, about it took me a long time to realise this and to appreciate this fully. I thought it was a nicety, because surely as a leader I have to have the answers, don't I, to everything? And this is this slide, when I saw you put it together, particularly resonated with me, because it's such a key enabler, and yet it doesn't come naturally. And it's a really interesting journey you need to take leaders on in order to understand the negative impacts they can usually unintentionally have if they don't take this stuff seriously. Yeah. One of the most inspirational questions you can get from a leader is, I wish I knew. Right. And I think that takes me to that last point, is leaders need to model curiosity. What would happen if? I wonder. I wish I knew. We got to make learning possible throughout the whole of the organization, because I tell you what, Rich, I learned, even at my age and after 35 years of doing this, every day is a school day. I learn something new every day, and I celebrate when someone points something out to me. It may be something I thought I knew, but I now see it with a different light. And I think that's one of the things that we should be. Maintain the curiosity and make learning possible, make it fun as well. So how do we go about making sure that leadership enables and not controls? And I go back to that top one, model curiosity. Ask open-ended questions, that learning focused questions. For example, what's the process? What's getting in your way? One of the best curiosity models, questions
I heard, I think, Rich, we spoke about this in the past, is one of the chief executives that we've been working with, and we'd spent probably about 4 or 5 years working with this organization, and they had a major problem kick off one day when we were there. And I was astounded when I heard the leader say, was that the result of assignable cause? And when you get there, you think, my gosh, that person has really got it. They're asking the right question. And we need to create psychological safety to foster a culture where people feel safe to speak up and to experiment. Remember, it's great to actually get something wrong as long as you learn fast. Learn from failure. Remove barriers. Actively identify and eliminate obstacles that prevent teams from improving. And one of the things that we don't do, and probably one of the things that most organizations do badly, is protect time for improvement. So really do allocate time and space for teams to reflect and learn. It took time for me to put this presentation together. I've got some insights from my learning, a collective learning from all of my experiences over the many years. I think, oh my gosh, I hadn't realized I learned that, but it's great. And celebrate learning, not just the results. Recognize that behaviors like experimentation, collaboration, insight, not just the outcomes. Use process thinking and coach, don't command. That last one, coach, but don't command. Guide teams through questions that support rather than apply directives. So we'll go to 6, and then we've got about 5 minutes left. So probably just about timed this about right. Remember when we talk about
whistle to this poll.
Yeah, we are certainly. What gets measured, shaped, and what gets done. But measures must reflect the purpose and process performance, not just targets. Right, so they must do that. Use data to understand and improve the system, for learning, not to control, judge, or punish people. And recognize that sustained improvements come from aligning behaviors with purpose and embedding feedback loops into our daily work. To ensure measures support behaviors that drive sustainability, you can see the table there. Ensure KPIs reflect customer value, system health. You can see how some of these things are repeating themselves. Design measures that reinforce the desired behaviors. So choose metrics that encourage collaboration, encourage learning, encourage ownership. And I'm going to go to the one right at the bottom. Evolve measures with the context. As the system environment change, review and adjust what you measure to make sure that what you're measuring stays relevant to the context in which you are in. And you'll be amazed how often, Rich, we experience where the metrics have always been done this way. They have not evolved to take account of the evolving nature of the business and the world that business operates in. So the last one then, structured initiatives must reinforce the system. So any project that we have, any initiative we have, will only add value to the organization when they arise from a studied need within the system, and the resultant work will strengthen that system, not bypass it. They should follow a repeatable approach that respects the system's integrity, and therefore structured initiatives must reinforce the system by respecting its context, aligning with its purpose, and enabling sustainable improvement through learning and ownership. How we do that is through system learning first, by beginning to understand, begin by understanding how the system works before we attempt to change it. Respect for the context your system's in. Ensure initiatives are tailored to the unique environment and the constraints you're sat with at that time. And I'm going to go to the very last one again. Sustainability beyond the project. Plan for long-term ownership, integration and monitoring of the project outcomes. Now, the last two, I think we flew through relatively quickly because we wanted to get to this. So, Rich, I'm going to hand over to you.
We did, Des, but just a reminder, everyone that's registered will get the recording sent to their inbox, so you'll be able to look at the slides in more detail. Jamil, would you like to launch the poll? This is exactly the same poll, folks, as last time. We want to see if Des has managed to change your mind, or if the understanding and exploration, what difference it's made to your perceptions of your own organisations. So go for it. Let's in the last couple of minutes, let's get see if we can get a response on this. And Des, just to warn you, whilst people are answering that, I have inserted a slide with the poll results from the first one in the hope that we'll be able to put these. It's on your next slide, and it's hidden currently.
Is it?
Aware.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Do I need to
aware I
unhide
hadn't
them?
told. Yes, you will. Yes, please. Okay, so let's see. So people are having a think about that. I can see responses coming in. Let's just give you another 20 seconds or so on that.
You're going to have to unhide that, Rich, because
yeah, that's fine. I can do that. I will. Yeah, no worries.
I can't see it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no worries. Unhide. Okay. Okay, let's have a look. Let's go with the results we've got so far and see if that. Oh, it is different. Good grief. Okay. Right, I'm gonna snip this now. Sorry, folks, for running out of time if we haven't captured your response yet. Let's get an indicative look of how these two things are comparing. I do want to share this with you. So just stick that into the chat. Des, if you go on to the next slide in your deck, you should have the results for us. No, you haven't. I'm gonna take over sharing, Des. So
that's fine. If you do that, then that's fine. Yeah. That'd be great. If you then do it, yeah.
So folks, here we go. Apologies, it's not in presenter view. So it is in presenter view, sorry. So what have we got? Differences we made. So before the session, at the top, i.e. the area that was weakest, was measures support behaviours that drive sustainability. We're now saying it's strategic assets. Mission accomplished, Des, I think you can take from that. So really interesting development there. Yet G remains the same as the strongest points, and all the other points have changed positions. So really interesting to see that. Thank you, folks, for that. I'm going to leave you on this, which is a reminder. We are completely delighted that Goals to Results Conference is back. Save the date, the 17th of March 2026. We have had the lid blown off by the response we've had so far. I think that's indicative. It was our first time in 2024 that we ran the Goals to Results Conference. Amazing feedback. We've built this new one. The strapline is performance improvement in an AI-driven world. We'd love to see you there. You can join the priority booking now and release it later in the year. Be great to see you there. Desmond, thank you so much for your contribution. It has been thought-provoking as ever. Thank you everyone for being with us this afternoon. Wonderful for your to have your participation, your comments and feedback. And we very much look forward to seeing you on the next PMI Live, which will be the final Friday of the month, when at 3 p.m. UK time. Be great to see you there. Thank you, folks. Take care.
Cheers, guys.